Hello students, teachers, parents, history nerds. Hello everybody, and welcome to Nutshelled History, where we lay out the facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Today we are going to continue our economics series by looking at trade, development, and globalization. Don't forget that there's a link for a fill-in-the-blank worksheet in the description. I just ask that you like and subscribe. I apologize for any mispronunciations ahead of time. I do my best. Okay, let's go. First off, why the heck do nations trade with each other? Natural resources, human capital, and physical capital are kind of like secret ingredients in each country's recipe for success, but no two countries have the same pantry. Because of this, countries have to play to their strengths, specializing in what they can make the best. For example, coffee grows way better in Central America than, say, Alaska. Since no country can whip up everything its citizens want, imagine trying to grow bananas in Canada. They trade with each other. Now, if a country can produce more of something with the same amount of resources, it's got the absolute advantage. Basically, it's the top chef. But when it comes to making stuff at a lower cost than others, that's called comparative advantage, the smart shopper of the economic world. According to the law of comparative advantage, countries should stick to what they're good at, sell that, and then use the profits to buy what they're not so great at making. Exports are like a country's gift to the world, while imports are the goodies they get in return. The US is second only to China in exporting and holds the crown for being the top importer, so it's got a pretty busy shopping cart. But when countries specialize, job shifts happen. Just ask the American auto industry in the 1970s, when Japan got really good at making cars. As Japan revved up production, some US workers found themselves out of the driver's seat. Since our peeps not having jobs is skibidi, most countries have trade barriers. Think of them as the bouncers of the economy, stopping foreign products from crashing the local market. One kind of bouncer is the import quota, which tells a product, sorry, we're at capacity, no more of you allowed. Then there's the voluntary export restraint, where a country limits its own exports, like telling your neighbor, I'll only borrow you so much sugar. And of course, tariffs are the cover charge, a tax on imports. Trade barriers come with their own pros and cons. For instance, if the US slaps tariffs on imported cars, it's great for American car makers because it gives them a fighting chance. But for consumers, not so much. They end up paying more for those imported wheels. Plus, without the pressure of competition, US manufacturers might get a little too comfy and not bother improving their own efficiency. And if one country starts blocking imports, another might retaliate with their own barriers, sparking a good old trade war. Spoiler alert, trade wars tend to leave everyone with fewer options. Protectionism is when a country wraps its industries in a cozy blanket of trade restrictions to shield them from the cold winds of cheaper foreign imports. The idea is to protect local jobs, but it can also slow down innovation and make products more expensive. These days, the trend has been to cut down on trade barriers and encourage more trade through global deals. The World Trade Organization, WTO, is like the referee, making sure everyone plays nice. In 1993, the US joined the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, with Canada and Mexico, which lowered trade barriers between the three. Some say NAFTA helped the US economy grow, while others argue it took jobs away from American workers. In 2020, NAFTA was terminated and replaced by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Meanwhile, multinational corporations are living their best life with free trade. Take an automobile company, for example. They might design cars in the US, source parts from Asia, and assemble them in Canada, like one big international puzzle. This puzzle gets even more complicated considering countries use different currencies. Before you can start living your best life abroad, you've got to swap your trusty US dollars for the local currency. The value of that foreign currency compared to your own is the exchange rate, and just like your mood, it changes daily. When a currency's value goes up, it's called appreciation. Kind of like when you get a raise, except now your stuff is more expensive to everyone else, so exports take a nosedive. But imports, they're suddenly on sale. Depreciation is the reverse. When your currency drops in value, your exports become cheap and irresistible. But imports? Well, now they're the pricey ones. All this currency swapping happens in the foreign exchange market, aka the world's currency pit stop, where banks and other financial wizards help nations and businesses trade cash like it's no big deal. This market keeps international trade humming along. Some countries prefer to keep things simple with a fixed exchange rate system, anchoring their currency to something steady like the US dollar or the euro. But since 1973, the US and many other countries decided to let their exchange rates float freely based on supply and demand, like a leaf drifting down a river, sometimes smooth, sometimes chaotic. Now let's talk trade. The balance of trade is like keeping score between imports and exports. Ideally, you want things even. What you sell should equal what you buy. If you export more than you import, you've got a trade surplus. Woohoo! But if you're importing more than you're exporting, that's a trade deficit. Basically the US's status since the 1990s. And our beautiful team of countries is not always operating at the same level. There's a world of difference between the rich kids on the global block and those still waiting for their allowance. Development is the fancy term for when a nation decides to level up its people's economic, political, and social game. Essentially, it's all about how well a country can feed, clothe, and house its citizens. In the club of developed nations, like the United States, folks enjoy a high average level of material well-being. Think of it as the VIP section with all the comforts. Meanwhile, most nations fall into the less developed countries, LDCs category, where the material well-being is more of a sad trombone sound. Now, not all LDCs are lagging behind. Some are strutting their stuff as newly industrialized countries, like Mexico, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and a few Eastern European nations. These countries have either struck gold with their natural resources or rolled up their sleeves and turned to manufacturing, so they're moving up in the world. The primary way we measure development is through per capita gross domestic product, GDP, which sounds complicated but is just a posh way of saying how much money a country makes divided by its total population. So, while Spain and India might have impressive GDPs, India's massive population means its per capita GDP is like that friend who always orders the cheapest thing on the menu. Another measure of development is energy use per person. Developed nations are chugging down oil and electricity like it's their morning coffee, while many LDCs are still working the land just to feed their families. Kind of like that neighbor who grows tomatoes in their backyard. We can also check development levels by looking at literacy rates, life expectancy, and infant mortality rates. In developed countries, more people can read and write, live long enough to share their wisdom, and the little ones have a fighting chance. In LDCs, not so much. Think of it as a game of survival where education resources are as scarce as a unicorn sighting. Developed nations share some common traits, like high consumer spending on shiny gadgets, hello computers, with agriculture thriving but requiring fewer workers. Kind of like how everyone loves pizza, but only a few are willing to actually make it. Thanks to technology, those who do work in industries and services are super productive, and cities thrive while rural areas kind of get left in the dust. On the flip side, less developed countries have their own set of common issues, like high unemployment rates, often around 20%. Yikes! The goods produced often end up getting shipped out to richer nations, while the local populace struggles to get a decent education. Housing and diets can be pretty dismal, and combined with limited health care, that's a recipe for high infant mortality rates and short life expectancies. It's like being stuck in a never-ending game of musical chairs, where the music keeps stopping, but the chairs never seem to appear. And leveling up to final boss status has a lot of challenges. Rapid population growth in less developed countries, LDCs, is like that one friend who shows up to the party uninvited and brings 10 more people with them. The average population growth rate in LDCs is around 1.8% per year, which sounds modest until you realize that life expectancy is increasing and birth rates are doing their best to set world records. This is like trying to fit an ever-expanding group of people into a clown car. There's just not enough room. With more people comes a demand for more jobs, health facilities, education, and all the goods that keep society running. Think of it as an ever-increasing shopping list that no one has time or money to fulfill. Now let's talk about the uneven distribution of natural resources. Some nations are like the kids at a birthday party who get all the cake, while others are left with only a crumb. LDCs often find themselves without the mineral resources or fertile farmland they need to grow. It's like trying to bake a cake with just a spatula. Good luck with that. When it comes to physical and human capital, LDCs are often running on empty. Without the right tools and knowledge, industries can't grow, and agricultural output is about as impressive as a soggy salad. The skills and know-how of workers, aka human capital, are crucial for economic development. Unfortunately, access to education is often limited, with girls facing even more obstacles. It's like trying to run a marathon while wearing flip-flops. Just not gonna happen. Health and political issues also throw a wrench in the works. Many people in LDCs are grappling with malnutrition, essentially trying to run a race on an empty stomach. And political challenges, like a history of colonialism, civil war, or corrupt governments, are like roadblocks on the path to progress. Now, when it comes to financing their development, LDCs can take two routes. Internal financing comes from the savings of citizens, but if folks are barely scraping by, saving money is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. That's why many LDCs rely on foreign investment, basically the lifeline thrown by other countries. There are two flavors of foreign investment: foreign direct investment, FDI, where foreigners set up shop in another country. Think of it as starting a chain restaurant in a new town. And foreign portfolio investment, which is like buying shares in a mutual fund, more of a spectator sport. Foreign governments often chip in with development funds or disaster relief, driven by a mix of humanitarian concerns and, let's be honest, their own agendas. It's a bit like sharing snacks at a party, but you're also trying to impress your date. International economic institutions are also on the scene, promoting development like overzealous cheerleaders. The World Bank, for instance, hands out loans and advice like a generous relative at holiday dinner. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, is all about kicking poverty to the curb, while the International Monetary Fund, IMF, offers a helping hand to LDCs that can't pay their debts. They can even work out a deal to lengthen repayment times, like extending your deadline for that essay you totally forgot about. Finally, we have private aid groups, or NGOs, swooping in like superheroes. Organizations like the Red Cross and the World Wildlife Fund raise funds to help LDCs build their economies. Because who doesn't love a good underdog story? So while LDCs face a mountain of challenges, there's a whole squad of players ready to help them rise to the occasion. Many less developed countries, LDCs, are trying to break free from the cozy embrace of centrally planned economies and venture into the wild world of free markets. It's a bit like trying to TX your grandma how to use a smartphone. It's not going to be easy. One of the first steps in this transition is privatization, which is basically selling off state-owned businesses like their garage sale items. Come one, come all, get your government-run enterprises here. Another vital step is revamping the legal system to protect private property rights, because nothing says, "Trust me," like having a legal document that says you actually own something. However, in this competitive arena, some inefficient businesses might face the grim reality of failure, leading to unemployment and the kind of unrest that makes for great headlines, but not so great barbecues. Take Russia, for example. They tossed their centrally planned economy out like last year's Christmas tree and dove headfirst into free markets. Before the late 1980s, Russia was part of the Soviet Union, a place where the only thing that flourished was bureaucratic red tape. When communism crumbled in 1991, it was like opening the floodgates. Suddenly, without price controls, prices of goods skyrocketed. Billions poured in from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and friends. But with mismanagement and corruption doing their best impression of a buddy cop movie, the funds didn't really fix the leaky roof. By 1998, Russia's economy was in a tailspin, but a bit of central control and some good old Russian oil prices saved the day, proving that sometimes a little government intervention is just what the doctor ordered. Then there's China, the land of dragon dances and economic marvels. They've managed to take their communist system and sprinkle in some free market magic, like adding chocolate chips to a classic cookie recipe. Farmers and factory managers were given more freedom, which is like giving kids extra recess time. Mayhem ensues, but the results are often delightful. With hundreds of special economic zones, China has rolled out the welcome mat for foreign investment. Since these reforms, China has become the world's largest exporter and a key trading partner for the United States. However, as we all know, just because the economy is thriving doesn't mean the political scene is as sunny. Meanwhile, in the 1990s, India decided to join the Globalization Party and invited foreign investment to crash on its couch. The high-tech industries soared like a Bollywood blockbuster, leading to the emergence of a much larger middle class. But let's not forget the folks living in rural areas, who are still trying to make ends meet with subsistence farming. It's like playing an old-school video game, where you're stuck on level 1, while others zoom past. In North Africa, some nations have built productive economies, mainly thanks to their treasure troves of oil. However, south of the Sahara, only South Africa and Nigeria are flexing their economic muscles. In Latin America, Brazil and Mexico are the shining stars of economic success. Both countries are rich in resources and have taken steps to diversify their economies. Brazil is like a manufacturing powerhouse, cranking out everything from vehicles to shoes. Yes, those stylish flip-flops you love. Mexico is also getting in on the action, promoting its tourism industry and building factories like they're setting up lemonade stands. Thanks to their diverse economies, Mexico and Brazil have liberated 80% or more of their labor forces from farm work, leaving plenty of room for beach vacations and shopping sprees. And now, the world seems like it is getting smaller and so much more interdependent. Welcome to the wild world of globalization, where producers, consumers, and financial systems are interconnected like an over-enthusiastic game of Twister. Think of it as the world's biggest potluck dinner, where everyone brings a dish, and sometimes it's just a mystery casserole. So what's cooking in the globalization kitchen? Well, several factors are adding spice to the mix, like lightning-fast communication and transportation that make it easier for suppliers to connect with customers halfway across the globe. It's like ordering a pizza from Italy and having it show up at your door in 30 minutes or less. If only it were that easy. The rise of free market economies has opened up new investment opportunities, and regional trading blocs are the secret sauce that ties nations together into one interconnected world economy. Just think of them as the friendship bracelets of international trade, except they come with lots of fine print and some serious monetary commitments. But hold on, globalization isn't all sunshine and rainbows. When one country sneezes, the whole world catches a cold, thanks to the tight-knit financial markets. And while multinational corporations are strutting their stuff on the globalization catwalk, critics argue they're like that friend who takes all the pizza home after the party, leaving less developed countries with little to show for it. Most of the profits head to foreign owners, leaving locals feeling like they just scored a "congratulations, you played yourself" sticker. Then there's the job issue. As companies pack their bags and move operations overseas like they're on an extended vacation, folks in developed nations are understandably worried about their jobs going the way of the dodo. It's a classic case of, "Hey, where did my job go?" followed by an awkward silence. With globalization comes population shifts that resemble a game of musical chairs. In many LDCs, less developed countries, cities are the shiny new playgrounds with job opportunities, while rural areas are left looking like last year's hot holiday destination. Each year, millions of hopeful workers pack their bags and move to developed nations, dreaming of a better life. Many send cash back home, kind of like a financial wish-you-were-here postcard. But here's the kicker. The brain drain is real. The brightest minds leave LDCs for well-paying jobs abroad, taking with them the human capital needed to fuel their home country's development. It's like sending your best player to a rival team. You're just asking for trouble. While globalization brings new opportunities, it also serves up a heaping plate of challenges. Issues of equal treatment and environmental concerns stir the pot, creating tension between the developed and developing worlds, like a heated family dinner discussion that nobody wants to have. Environmental scientists, mostly based in developed nations, are wringing their hands over rapid development and its impact on Mother Nature. They're promoting sustainable development, which is basically a fancy way of saying, let's not destroy the planet while we're trying to get rich. Deforestation is one of the big bad wolves of globalization, with forests disappearing faster than snacks at a movie night. Even the United States, the superstar of global economies, isn't immune to the challenges of globalization. For American workers to keep their game face on in the global marketplace, they need to adapt like chameleons in a paint store. Meanwhile, American companies must keep the innovation train rolling or risk being left in the dust. After all, who wants to be the last one to the party? Oi, this was a big nut to shell, but now it is time for a recap. Countries trade with each other like chefs swapping secret ingredients, each playing to their strengths, like coffee in Central America rather than Alaska. If a country can produce something with fewer resources, it has the absolute advantage, while comparative advantage means it can make things cheaper than others. So countries export their best stuff, gifts to the world, and import what they can't whip up themselves. This can lead to job shifts. Just ask the American auto industry when Japan hit the gas pedal in the 70s. To protect local jobs, countries set up trade barriers, acting like bouncers at an exclusive club. Tariffs, quotas, and export restraints might help local producers, but they often leave consumers paying more. While globalization brings opportunities for trade and investment, it also stirs the pot of competition and can lead to trade wars, which are about as fun as a family argument over who gets the last piece of pie. LDCs are still trying to catch up, battling high unemployment and poor resources, while developed nations enjoy the spoils of their thriving economies. But as globalization continues to shrink our world and link economies like an overzealous game of Twister, it's clear that every country has a unique recipe for success. Some just need a few more ingredients. There you have it, folks. That is trade, development, and globalization nutshelled. Thanks for stopping by Nutshelled History. I am glad that you went along for the ride, as this is the last topic video for Nutshelled Economics. I hope that I can do some shorter, more focused ones, but I will need those likes and subscribes to motivate me. There are no barriers to you hitting those buttons. See y'all next time on Nutshelled History.